Hello and welcome to the Not a Guru podcast. I'm one of your podcast hosts, Tyler Smith, certified athletic trainer, certified strength and conditioning specialist. I'm also here alongside the prestigious Dr. Heidi Cooke. We are here to help you with personal development, personal growth, and really building a foundation that lasts you your whole life. We're so excited you're here today, and let's jump in.
Howdy ho.
Hello, hello, hello.
Holy smokes. We're back.
We're back. It's been a long time. Some people may not recognize the name of the podcast, but
That's right.
we took a little hiatus and it has been a solid 6 months. We were talking earlier. Solid 6 months since we've done this.
Maybe even a little bit longer because Cal turns 6 months tomorrow when we're recording this. And I think we stopped recording the podcast like 2 or 3 weeks before I had him.
Yeah, I want to say it was either late May, early June, somewhere in there. Yeah, it was. We recorded a bunch and then like I dripped them out through the end of May. So it might have been the middle of May that we actually stopped.
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, he was born the end of May. So yeah, it's been over 6 months, which is just like so wild.
It is. He's so grown now.
I know. He's so big. Time goes so fast. Tyler and I selfishly were catching up before we pressed record because it's literally been 6 months since we sat down with each other too. So we were having a nice little catch up sesh. But in that, like just talking about how it almost like feels like yesterday that we were sitting down and recording, almost like no time has passed, but it also feels like I have lived a lifetime and a half since the last time we
You
sat down.
have, I'm sure, with a newborn, you have lived more than a lifetime and a half.
And it's just so different. Like, I think that's the craziest thing is like, I feel so different now. And it's just like, I want to go back and like watch some of those like last recordings of me pre-Cal that I could just like, that girl has no idea what's about to happen.
No, I was thinking that the other day, like where you're like, I'm gonna be gone 4, 6, 8 weeks tops, and I'm back at this.
I literally said 8 weeks tops. Oh my God. What a dummy.
Well, I mean, life just has that way of sometimes, changing your plans despite what you
Yes.
think.
And like, truthfully, I think I kind of, not like that I needed the break, but like I just sometimes I'm so stubborn that like the
No,
only
are you sure?
like to a fault. I am so stubborn to a fault. And so I think just like getting to a place where I had like no other choice other than to be like all in on this thing and like forget about what balancing both would look like and just like fully focus there because I literally couldn't do anything else. I think was like, I don't know, kind of needed in a way. Like it like forced me to slow down. It forced me to like be very present. It forced me to like, yeah, just like be in it and be in the thick of it and not worry. Well, I was worried when 8 weeks came and left and I was like nowhere even close to feeling like I could come back. But then like, over time and that kind of continuing and, more space between like this kind of arbitrary timeline that I gave myself. And now like I was able to just kind of, yeah, like I think make peace with like this is the reality that you're living and don't fight it and just let it be what it is and you know like it will be a period of time, right? And this
Yeah,
will
it's
be
one of
here.
those, seasons of life that you just gotta kind of like one of those storms, you're out in the ocean, you just gotta weather it and you just gotta to get through it because there's not a whole lot you can do, other than just, make things as optimal as you can at the time and just move forward.
Yeah, so like I mean we're gonna get into what this kind of next chapter is all gonna look like, what the podcast is going to look like, and what kind of our hope and goal is for this particular podcast and kind of the chapter moving forward. But I know so many of you are going to be coming over from How to Health. And I also just want to kind of open the door to any new listeners that are listening as well, or tuning in for the very, very first time and haven't been here for any of our podcast chapters. I'm just going
Yeah.
to catch you up to speed a
I
little
was gonna
bit.
say we're like chatting back and forth, and they're like, "Who are these people?"
Who
And
are these
well,
people?
what is going on here?
Yes, let me catch you guys up. So, um, my name is Heidi. That feels so silly to say. I am an athletic training, well, I guess I have my athletic training certification. I'm not licensed to practice athletic training, in the state of anywhere, uh, because I went straight from my athletic training certification into PT school, so I never actually practiced as once I was certified. But then I went to PT school, so now I'm a doctor of physical therapy, and that is where my license is now. And about what year is it? I always forget.
2024.
It is 2024. In 2019, right? 2019, I
Ooh.
started the very first podcast.
I don't have that one. I have our old ones on my phone. I don't have the
Yeah,
ones. Yeah, I'm
I
trying
think
to
it was
think of it.
2019. I started the very first podcast. I started it solo. Um, and that was like the first step I took in starting my business, which also is hilarious. And we will get into all of that in future episodes as well about like, haha, biggest mistakes that we made in terms of what I thought the, business ownership was and how to get started. But I started with a podcast, and it was kind of like my low stakes way of like dipping my toe into the world and like getting my message out there. But I was also just like so naive into like what that was and what it was to grow a podcast or a platform or anything at all, really. But the message has kind of stayed the same throughout, right? So everything that I created in my business was to help individuals with their overall health, right? But from a perspective of kind of long-term lasting behavior change and fighting against this kind of roller coaster that people typically find themselves on when starting or navigating a health journey, right? This kind of like all in, all out mentality, and helping people with true behavior change. And so we started with the podcast, and then I was recording the podcast for a year. Ouch. A year until and Tyler was a listener, and Tyler, we'll get into also how Tyler and I know each other. Oh my gosh, there's so many layers to this.
So
But long story short, this is now Tyler and I's third iteration of the podcast because it has continued to just kind of like morph and grow over time. And I think as we've morphed and grown over time, I think the biggest thing that I have realized that is the common thread kind of amidst not only health and behavior change, or wherever you're trying to grow and change in your life is just kind of this ongoing theme of personal development and continued learning and continued growth and like allowing yourself to be a lifelong learner in whatever avenue you're seeking change instead of chasing this kind of level of perfection or this finish line and letting it kind of be an evolution. And I think that is where this kind of idea of not a guru came from. Like there is no end destination where I can sit here and say that like I am a guru in X, right? Like I, alongside of all of my clients that, over the last 5 years, right, has I have been navigating my own health right alongside that, right? In terms of my own uh, overall health, body image, all of those different things, then pregnancy, postpartum, right? Like all of that, like I was navigating alongside them. And I think in this space, particularly this podcast space, but the health podcast space, and just, the podcast space in general, I think individuals and podcast hosts come from this angle of guru, right? Like, listen to me and I'll show you the way. When in reality, I think the best results, and the most bought in clients, and the like I said, like the best results that we get are when we are in it with you, right? And like growing alongside you, instead of feeling like we've gotten to this arbitrary kind of peak on the mountain and are trying to pull you up. Well, eventually, like, we're going to get to this peak and we have nowhere to go, right? That caps out over time. Information strategies get outdated over time. And if we're not continuing to learn and grow and kind of approach this from an angle of leadership, right? Instead of this angle of like guru, know everything, follow me. I think we see a lot greater long-term success over time. And so that's kind of where we are now. And we'll get into more about, who we are and our, I guess, path within all of that. But that's just kind of a quick overview of where we've been, where we're going, for those of you that are new.
Yeah, and I think so. For those of you listening, I'm Tyler, which, like you said, sounds really weird to say, but I would like to welcome everyone who's joining us. And I think my background is a little bit like Heidi, and we'll get into it at some point, or I'm sure you guys will hear the story of how we work together. But practicing athletic trainer in Idaho, but also, to kind of complement the things that you were saying, I'm also a sports nutritionist, and I'm a certified strength and conditioning coach and a supervisor for Boise State, or the director of athletic training services for Boise State. Um, so in that facet, I have really jumped into growth in myself, growth in my career, and then growth in other people. And I think that's one thing that I've really learned. I've been in a leadership position at the collegiate level for close to 20 years now. And I think a lot of it is just understanding how to develop yourself, how to develop other people, and how everyone's journey. And that's why I really like the title of this. Everyone's journey is not going to be the same. Everyone is a different person, and everything kind of molds and fits to you in a different way. And the only way that we can kind of explore more of that is just to grow all the time and to try to. But I think the great part about this is being very vulnerable and, like some of the topics, in the fact where, like, we don't have all the answers, and I can guarantee you there might be something that we'll talk about that in, like, 3 to 5 years, I might tell you something entirely different. But that's keeping that your mind open, that, when those people tell you, like, no, like, there's very few absolutes in anything.
Yeah.
And if people are selling you absolutes, then you're probably it's either not going to work or it's not going to fit the way you want it to. So being vulnerable with each other and being able to understand that, we're all in this journey together, and, I can learn just as much from, and I do, like, every time I get a new employee, every time I get a new athlete, they're teaching me something that I haven't learned, or they're opening a part of me that I haven't had an opportunity to explore. And I mean, sometimes it's good, bad, and indifferent, but I think that's going to be a great journey to kind of explore that next chapter, especially for both of us, since we've gone through this and we've done this so much. Hopefully I have some insight on some things. Like, obviously I haven't grown a business, but I've been in the business of, like, a high pressure situation business for a long time. So I've learned a lot of um, things about myself, but things that I want to help teach people, and hopefully not only help you if you are, growing a business, if you're a healthcare professional, or if you just, and I think that's one thing that we do really well. If you just want to be a better person, a better wife, a better husband, you can take a lot of these things and apply them in your home, in your work, in anywhere you go, and you'll be able to grow and really, like, enhance who you are as a person.
100%. And yeah, like while some of these topics might be a little bit more like business focused, I don't want anybody to view this as a business growth type podcast because it's really goes, far beyond that. And really where I felt like called to make a switch is a little bit twofold, maybe threefold. The first was kind of this, like I said, that kind of common thread, whether it's your health, growing a business, or moving up in your career, or how you are, presenting yourself in whatever role it is that you hold, right? And allowing these concepts to kind of infiltrate those different pockets, because it always seemed that, well, yes, we're helping somebody, navigate these things with their health. The principles or the work that we were doing is 9 times out of 10,
Oh,
right?
maybe 95% of the time.
Yeah, is the internal work,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
That internal work is the foundation of all of that behavior change. And then it's like once you just sprinkle in the information that you need to like that you can apply, right? But we're not applying it if that internal work isn't done. So it's like almost as if the information, these kind of like research or evidence-based frameworks are like the sprinkles on top of all of this work that we're doing at the depth or at the core. And so I really wanted to make something that was dedicated to that core level work. And so that was kind of part A. Part B, and why we're taking it from this angle, is because I got really pissed off listening it to a podcast, and I'm not going to name any names, but it's one of the largest podcasts out there in the world. And I mean, like, in all the respect to him, I think he has, put a lot of really great information out there. But on the flip side of that, I listened to an episode that he published about low back pain, and 90s may be an exaggeration. A large portion of the research that he was citing and speaking on is outdated, or he was misinterpreting the data. And it was really frustrating for me to listen to from somebody who is, educated in that particular field, right? And knowing that a lot of what he's talking about is what we are in the field, like actively trying to combat, right? To kind of steer towards what is actually accurate and factual and working for patients in terms of where the research is headed, and what's making a greater impact on patient outcomes. And what he was talking about was essentially like where we're trying to shift from. It was outdated, incorrect. And I sat there and I was like, oh my gosh, right? That is one topic that he talked on and, published an episode on that I felt very informed in, right? That I feel like I have a lot of knowledge in. And I'm sitting there like, this is whack. Like, this is so whack. And then I had to catch myself. I've listened to a dozen other, plus episodes on topics that I don't have a lot of knowledge on, and took a lot of what he was saying and the research that he was interpreting at face value, right? Because he's sitting there saying evidence-based, and, citing these research articles, etc. But when they're outdated and have since been disproved, right? Like, I'm sitting here taking all of this at face value, like, oh, wow, interesting. And it just made
Yeah.
me think, like, how much of what I have listened to from him would an actual, quote unquote, expert in the field have to say about that particular, episode. And so it just like made me mad that there's so much of this like positioning yourself as a quote unquote guru in the space, in the podcast space, health space, and beyond, right? And like, kind of shifting the narrative a little bit over into this kind of business and personal growth, personal development side of things. That is another like just place that is riddled with quote unquote gurus in the space, and it is like almost sickening, right? Like, you know, how entrenched in this idea. And I don't know if it comes from if I don't position myself with confidence, then nobody's going to listen to me, or if they truly do believe they know it all, right? Like that is where I get so frustrated. And so I really wanted to approach this podcast as we move forward from a, like I said, like a authentic place of leadership. And I truly do believe that like leadership comes from like doing the work alongside you and with you, instead of, you know, standing up on a pedestal telling you. So hopefully that's exactly what we will achieve. And in that as well, if there's topics or things that we think are maybe better suited to discuss with a guest, hopefully we can get the appropriate person on to discuss that with us. And then also, you know, kind of talk to them in how they're living that and leading that as well. And working on that again alongside you.
Yeah, I think to the first thing that you talked about, which is as far as when we were dealing with clients, um, like 95% of it came down to that internal work. I think a
Mhm.
lot of people, like, here's a very easy example. Like, when it comes to health and fitness, let's just say someone has like a quick goal to like, I want to get in shape. There is no, what do I want to say this correctly as? You can find all the information on how to do that online, and there's no shortage of information,
Yeah,
but it doesn't seem to work. The information by itself just isn't doing it. And
totally.
to your point, because it's the reflection or the internal work that we have to do first, which is why I think a lot of people, when you look at this, and I would even point to your second one, like if you want to be, you can't be, I'll throw out a statement. You can't be a great leader if you're not willing to learn all the time and to
Yeah.
understand that you have to develop yourself every day. And like even now, like I can't tell you the amount of times where we're reinventing and rehashing how we work out with student athletes because they're just different now. And
Hmm.
your leadership style or what you were doing before isn't working with the new kids. Specifically, like I'll throw it out there, like the COVID kids. Like they're just a different, there's a different mentality and a different thing. But as a leader and in any self-development, you have to be able to mold and learn and understand. And that's what really makes like you a better person. And it transitions to so many different things, whether it's your family, health, fitness, all those things. And you get to this wonderful place. And I think you and I have got there, and you know, we'll probably talk to this at some point, but like you start to learn all this stuff, and then like there's a paradigm that we've referenced before on this, but like when you know you don't know a lot, you get so humble that you just want to learn more because you realize there's so much that like you were wrong on or you don't understand. And that's an okay place to be, but you're comfortable in it.
Yeah, I think like one of the greatest examples of that that I can think of, and I know I've talked about him previously on the podcast, but I had a professor at my grad school for physical therapy, and he was a previous business owner, ran a thriving physical therapy practice, and you know, was the owner of this clinic. And a lot of what he was doing and how he was practicing was all based in manual therapy. And I won't get, you know, too lost into the weeds of, you know, where that's going, or, you know, where it was and how it's, you know, changed or whatever. But basically, he gave up his entire practice when he started reading the research on how manual therapy wasn't doing what we thought it was doing, right? And so again, it comes from this wave of research that, you know, kind of tells us one thing, and he models his practice after that, right? And he's practicing that, and then new research is published, and instead of feeling attacked or entrenched in his ways, or, you know, arguing with, well, look at all of this, you know, quote unquote success that I have in this practice that's, you know, modeled after this, you know, this way of practicing, He instead, was open and willing to make the shift. And then he was able to take that new information and what he learned and have an even greater impact, not only in teaching at George Fox, but then he went on to run a very successful and very impactful practice within the walls of George Fox. And so, and just like watching him make that switch and like his entire life's work, right? Like being uprooted like that and being so willing to change. Like I always have that kind of like little piece in the back of my mind of, there are people out there that are so willing to continue to learn and grow instead of continue to like dig their heels into what they once thought was the way.
Yeah. And this is a funny example, but like you talked about having a successful practice and like an easy application, and I'm from the health and fitness world, is the Thigh Master made millions of dollars and
Right.
didn't change anyone's thighs at all. So never equate money to knowledge and success and understanding. So like, and I mean, there's always going to be, and I was thinking, and I just hope I can share a lot of them. Um, I've worked with some great leaders, some great coaches, ADs, like all that. But the one thing I've also noticed is no one's perfect. You always can find something where like, hey, this is that one flaw or that one thing that they need to work on. And so I think that's great. I think there's a lot of beauty in that because it shows that you can always have growth and that, hopefully if you can point out some of those things and you can have time and understanding and look at yourself every once in a while and be like, yeah, that's something I need to get better at. And
Mm,
give yourself the opportunity to do that. Like if we don't know those things, we can never get better at them. So
yeah. Yeah. And like, you know, to bring it back to, this like 6 month hiatus that we've had. And, I've gone through probably, the biggest life shift that I will likely ever go through. And realizing that it's a lot more challenging to put these things in practice when it is, when like shit is hitting the fan, right?
oh,
And
sure.
like uh thinking and again it like goes back to like thinking that you've got it, thinking that like you've got it under control, thinking that like, you know, uh, again it's this like not even a guru mentality, but like this expert mentality and like being almost humbled in a way to know that like no, like I'm still in it, like I'm still working through these things myself, right? And like I think opening up about that throughout the course of this podcast and as we dive into these different topics, and I'm excited to kind of talk about my experience with that over time and how that has also just like impacted me and how I want to approach things moving forward. Because yeah, these 6 months have been freaking humbling
Yeah, I'm
in
sure
that,
they have.
in that sense as well. And so like, um, yeah, I just feel very passionate about like the work is never done, you
Oh,
know?
it's never. Yeah, it's like that whole analogy when you were talking. What is the phrase when when man plans, God laughs. Like
Oh
when
yeah.
you think you got it all figured out,
Yeah.
something else happens. But having and being open, like you said, and taking that mindset is so valuable because your foundation doesn't get broken when things go wrong. You're like, okay, this is like in looking at it, good, bad, some of the worst things in the world, you might be able to be like, what did I need to learn from what just happened?
Yeah.
Like not that it shook your foundation because it can and it will, but like what is the one thing that I needed to learn from this that I learned sometimes it's the hard way, quote unquote, because it didn't come easy. But if you always looking in that, you're always opening yourself to just being better and just being understanding that we're a non-finished product. We're always, working on
Yeah.
working on your masterpiece,
There you
whatever that
go.
song is. I heard that the other day and I forgot about it.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I think like that's a conversation that we've had to have with so many individuals of like, what finish line are you running towards, right? Especially in the health space. And that translates into the personal development space, that translates into, the business space as well, of just like, what are we sprinting to, right? There's this arbitrary either goal or picture that we have of like what it's going to be like when it's done, when I've accomplished it, when like, you know, when you, whatever it is, whatever this pie in the sky is, right? But like it's ongoing and it's evolving and changing because your life evolves and changes. And if we don't have, again, that inner work, that core work, that foundation, those foundational skills rooted within us, right? Anytime there's a shift, a change, wrench thrown in the works, whatever it might be, like you are going to be derailed, right?
Right.
And then what was all that work for? And so again, like it just kind of all comes back to what is that core work? And so I really hope that this podcast can serve as a kind of self-help without the like icky cliche bullshit self-help, you know, that's out in the world right now, because it's like so not me, but it is so me at the same time, right? Like it's so interesting. I can't remember who I was talking to about like how I love reading like personal development type books. And it's almost like embarrassing, right? Like to say that people are like, "Oh, self-help book, whatever." And it's like, yeah, like some of them can be corny or, not all of them are hits, you know?
So I was gonna say, how many of you we've read at least 50 between the two of us,
Yeah.
and most of them are not fantastic at
No,
all.
there's like maybe a core five that I actually recommend to people. And so it's like, yeah, you have to do so much sifting through so much garbage to like actually find some good nuggets out there. But like it's always like almost a little bit like shameful because this kind of like self-help personal development space has become so like almost like laughable in a way because
Yeah,
it's so many people positioning themselves as like a come follow me in this almost like
yeah,
cult mentality. And it's frustrating. And so I hope that we can serve as a space that is like here to work on personal development, whether you want to call it self-help or not, in whatever capacity, whatever path that you're on. Um, and really, like I said, dive
Delve
into
did.
delve headfirst into this work that like we're doing right alongside you.
And I think, to your point, it's not much different than if you look at the diet culture, the fitness culture, where people found something that worked and then they kind of siloed themselves into this is what will work for everyone. And that's just usually not the case. And so what we want to do is like open it up, help you as much as we can, and like try to give you from a large variety of angles what we've gone through, what has worked and not work, or at least like there's a lot of books that I've read an entire self-help book and I was like, there was one nugget in one chapter loved. The rest of it I could throw away, but that's
Yeah,
something I'll keep and I'll share with someone because that's
yeah,
what I really liked in that whole thing.
yeah. Or it's like watered down,
Yeah.
right? And it's not actually helpful. And I feel like, you know, that can be said in the health space, that can be said in the business space. Like there's when again you try and make these big blanket statements instead of like operating within the nuance without operating within the gray. um we get lost, we get watered down, we try to be for everybody, and it's bullshit because it doesn't actually help anybody.
Very true. Very, very true.
So, yeah, hopefully that this is helpful for you, and we can't wait to hear from you. I mean, Tyler and I love to do Q&A episodes. We love to get the audience involved and engaged. And whether you're coming over from How to Health or if you are a brand new listener to Not a Guru, I am so excited to have you here. So excited to grow alongside you. We're going to be, like I said, just like a little peek into future episodes. We're going to be kind of diving into topics like, how to play the long game, navigating, change or inconsistency. We're going to talk about like authenticity and, beyond the buzzword of authenticity and what that
Yeah.
means. Candid conversations with people in their field and, how they have learned and how they've grown and how they're kind of working in the trenches alongside you on what it is that they are a quote unquote expert in. And so I'm just really excited to have some different perspectives, but then also, dive in with Tyler on some of these topics as well. So just really excited for what this season has in store, where we're going, where we're headed. And yeah, what this is going to be all about moving forward. I'm really excited to dive into it, and even more excited after a 6-month hiatus. It feels so good to be back in the seat. I literally sat down and turned like my desktop. I've been on my laptop obviously on and off throughout these 6 months, but like to turn my mic on for the first time in 6 months felt so good.
Yeah, it was really, I'm the same way where it's just been like, this has just been kind of sitting here doing nothing for a long
Collecting
period of
dust.
time.
Yeah, back at it, and I'm so excited. So, yeah, hopefully you're in it for the long haul with us. Episodes coming out every Monday as of right now. If there's any changes, because who knows?
Yeah, because
We'll let
that's
you know.
part of
But
the
right
game.
now,
Yeah.
yeah, but right now, episodes every Monday, and I'm so pumped to have you guys with us. And I can't wait to like really dive into the good stuff as the episodes continue to evolve.
Yeah, I'm super excited for the next chapter and just to share, to grow, and to learn alongside everyone else. It should be a great journey.
Let's do it.